Hello everyone, welcome to episode 98 of Level Up, 60 minutes of live Q&A where your questions, chat and votes drive the show. A warm welcome to everyone joining on LinkedIn and YouTube today. Please do say hello in the chat. Let us know your name and where you're joining from. We'd love to hear from you and get everyone involved. My colleagues Ella and Shanice are online and will post a link in the chat that you can use to vote up the questions you would most like answered and of course to add in your own questions. Level Up comes to you live on Mondays at 8 a.m. and Fridays at 2 p.m. UK time, live streamed both to YouTube and LinkedIn. If your question is selected today, your name will appear in the credits at the end of the show, so get yours in early and stay with us to see that happen. Our topic for today is how to facilitate like a pro. We've pulled together a highly experienced panel who are ready and waiting to share their thoughts and opinions with you. So let's bring them in and welcome today's panel. So Etienne Shardlow is a regular contributor to Level Up. He's a senior consultant and lead trainer for Symphonise Consulting. Etienne assists organisations with aligning IT and business strategies in a way that enables change and flexibility to respond quickly to rapidly evolving business environments. Welcome back, Etienne.
Yeah, good to be back. Nice to be here on a Friday afternoon.
Another of our returning panelists today is Sarbojit Bose. Sarbojit is the owner and managing director of training and consultancy at Cyberservices in Singapore. Sarbojit is also a regular on the cybersecurity conference circuit and counts helping to bring diversity to the training and facilitation domain amongst his proudest achievements. Welcome, Sarbojit.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for having me here, and hello to everyone in the panel. Thank you.
Okay, another returning panelist is Laurie Bowman. Laurie has 30 years of experience in management roles on complex multidiscipline engineering and construction projects and is a trainer and advisor on planning, assurance, risk management and control for projects, programs and portfolio. Nice to have you with us, Laurie.
Good to be here. Thank you, Ellie.
We also welcome back today Dianne Rampadarath. Dianne is the Assistant Director for the Public Service of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Dianne's proudest achievement, given her passion for sustainable rural development, is preparing a rural electrification policy and project proposal, recommending the extension of electricity grid and the utilisation of solar-powered panels to provide electrification for rural communities. Welcome back, Dianne.
Thank you very much, Ellie. It's always a pleasure to appear on Level Up, and thanks again to APMG International for the opportunity to appear on the show.
Welcome. And finally, making his Level Up debut today is Paul Bucknall. Paul has been in the Royal Air Force for 22 years and currently works as an engineering manager at the Centre for Aviation Medicine. As an additional duty, Paul regularly facilitates mandatory diversity and inclusion discussions across the RAF. Paul also spent 3 years in an out-of-trade position delivering leadership and management training to newly promoted supervisors and high-level managers. Welcome to the panel, Paul.
Hi, Ellie. Hi, everyone. Looking forward to my first appearance on Level Up and hopefully offer some useful tips.
Thanks for joining us. So our question master for today is Charlotte Miller. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Ellie. Hi, everybody.
Please may we have our first question?
You may, Ellie. We've got a question from Simon Cummins. How do you ensure that everyone gets the opportunity to contribute during a training session, whether this is online or in the classroom?
Okay, we'll have Paul and then Sarbojit and then Etienne for this one, please.
Hi, yeah. So, great question. Ensuring everyone contributes, I think it depends on the environment, but for me, if I can keep the numbers small, it's great because it gives everyone that opportunity to get involved. However, that's not always an option. So sometimes if it's a larger group, certainly bringing the group smaller so they can all contribute to the smaller group, have a spokesperson then who can then contribute to the larger group, bringing them back together. I think it's a useful technique that I find works quite well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. Sarbojit.
Hi. Well, thank you, Paul. What you said is absolutely correct. But I would add also, as a facilitator, we have to be more prepared. So to lay the ground rules of who speaks when and what order should we go so that we give the maximum opportunity to people. So we must have some rules, and especially like in online, we normally have these hand signals or emojis which we can ask them to raise. And if we are in a class, then of course, as being in the class, we can facilitate to see that everyone gets an equal opportunity to speak. And sometimes I know some people speak more, so we need to tackle them more tactfully and be more generic. Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with that one. Etienne.
Yeah, I find also we need to, as facilitators, be aware that we do have different personalities. Some people are going to be very loud and wanting to contribute. Other people may have opinions, may have views, but not comfortable sharing those views in a large group. So, as Paul said, break the group up into smaller groups sometimes. It's sometimes in those breakaway sessions where the people who are a little more shy and a little less vocal feel that they're able to speak a little bit more freely.
Yeah, thanks very much. Dianne, your thoughts, please.
Right, so you can probably start with an easy question so that you get people involved and wanting to contribute with an easier question than something that's more difficult and technical in nature. And also with online virtual sessions, you can encourage people to keep their cameras on so that they are involved in the process.
Yeah, definitely. That's good advice. Thank you for the question, Simon. Charlotte, please, may we have our second question?
You can, Ellie. Our next question is from Paul in Bradford. What would you say was the most important 3 roles of being a facilitator?
Okay, great. 3 important roles as a facilitator. We'll have Sarbojit, Dianne, and then Paul, please.
Hi, Jen, wonderful question. Now, as a facilitator, our job is to help the learners to learn their knowledge, to gain the knowledge. So that's the first thing that we need to do. Second is sometimes to be a mentor to them and to assist them, to guide them through their journey of learning. And as well, some other times we need to be also be a good friend to them so they can confide, they can feel comfortable, so they can share, because learning doesn't happen when you are scared or when you are not emotionally very stable. So we have to achieve that state with the learner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dianne.
Right. So initially, you can set an agenda so that everyone is aware of what is the topic to be discussed and how the flow of the meeting will be. You will also need to provide guidance as well as manage properly the task at hand so that you achieve the objective of the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Paul, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think a very similar response to some of those, but certainly creating that environment is really important to make sure people have that psychological safety, which I know is a term that's used a lot at the moment. But also, I think it's important to keep on topic as a facilitator, but also ask those thought-provoking questions, keep that discussion going, and making people really think about what they're talking about and what they're learning to really challenge their beliefs or whatever the topic is that you're talking about at that time.
Yeah, it's really, really helpful. Thanks, panel. Charlotte, another question, please.
Thanks, Ellie. We've got a question from Jane in Plymouth. What does a good facilitator look like? For example, what objectives would you set to achieve?
Okay, what does a good facilitator look like? Okay, we'll start with you, Sarbojit, then we'll go to Laurie and then Paul, please, and then Etienne.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now, a good facilitator should look like me. No, this was just a good facilitator should look like, first of all, must be a person of confidence and very organized, and must know what has to be achieved, because here the goal is not to achieve the self-achievement, but to help others achieve their objective. So that is the most important thing for a facilitator to be. So they have to be always be looking for the needs of their trainees.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
You.
Okay, Laurie, we're coming to you, please.
Yes, so I agree completely with Sarbojit. It's almost like conducting the orchestra. So there's a need to make sure that the participants get the benefit of being together so that ideas are exchanged. There is that bouncing off each other and that generation of ideas and so forth. But at the same time, knowing when to rein things in so that you're not having dominant personalities, you're giving people in the room the opportunity to contribute.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thanks, Laurie. Paul, your thoughts, please?
Yeah, I think you've got to remain open-minded as a facilitator at all times. But even post sessions, you've got to continue that learning process and seek that feedback as well from your sessions in order to improve. So yeah, I know something I always do is I always send out invals and questionnaires to gauge how the session went, so I can improve as a facilitator and continue to learn and improve in my techniques as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Etienne?
Yeah, I also think just to take it away from the kind of training environment to a facilitated workshop, there as a facilitator, you also need to be aware of what are the objectives, what kind of answers are you trying to, and obviously you don't want to steer the answer in a particular direction, but you do want to make sure that the objective of that workshop is achieved. And so it's always a good idea to kind of keep the group kind of focused on what the objective of the workshop is, what the objective of the training session is. And so for me, that's also a key part of being a good facilitator.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep everybody on track. Dianne, you wanted to add something to this one, I think.
Yes, so a good facilitator is someone who is very organized and who has a detailed agenda towards achieving the objective of the meeting. And also a facilitator is someone who is very adaptable and flexible. So you may come with a particular approach, but based on the flow of the meeting, a good facilitator would be able to change their technique to again achieve the objective and agenda of the meeting. So you have to be flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think also the ability to, put people at ease, to bring out the opinions from people and to help them to contribute to the meeting, with different personality types and their different readiness to join into discussions. I think that's an attribute that facilitators do require. Charlotte, another question, please, for our panel.
Thanks, Ellie. We've got a live question that's just come in. How to handle a situation when you face resistance from an employee during the change training? Resistance in the form of confronting question.
Okay. So how do we handle maybe confrontational questions or resistance when you're trying to facilitate a session? Sarbojit, we'll come to you first on this one, please, and then Paul.
Hi, very interesting. And this is something that I have encountered, and it's not that very alien to me. In many of my trainings, because the areas that I train, people come across new concepts and they become very resistant in accepting the new concept. So, so what I do is now I prepare everyone for this change. So that when the change comes, they are not unprepared, they are not just taken by shock. And if someone is coming up and resisting and confronting, that's the first thing I do, try to understand the learners or the trainee's requirement, and I would try to not discuss further in the class or in the workshop, but take it offline outside, because if I try to do that, there will be others who will try to value add, and that way I will lose the control over the session and it will become a big mess. So I would not try to solve it there and try to make something. If the person wants to leave for the time, I would ask the person to go and come back after a while so the person can, have a much more sober emotion, and then we can carry on.
Yeah, it's a great answer, taking the heat out of the situation. Thanks, Sarbojit. Paul, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's worthwhile probing at the time just to see if it is something that could be dealt with. It could be just a surface level fear of what's coming up. But if not, absolutely taking it out of the situation, because it'd be quite easily to lose control, or for the session to be railroaded, and people jumping on that bandwagon if it is something that other people are feeling similar sort of feelings towards. So taking it away from the situation, dealing with it after the event is probably the best course of action in that situation, I would suggest.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Etienne, your thoughts on this one, please.
Yeah. So I often have situations where there's resistance to some of the. So I spend a lot of time talking governance of IT, and there's often a lot of kind of resistance to some of the ideas. I'm dealing with a lot of very senior level managers who sometimes have very different views to how things should be done and why they should be involved in certain aspects of kind of IT governance. And when I deal with those situations where people are kind of feeling a little out of their depth, I sometimes phrase or turn the question around, and you can't do that obviously if it's a heated discussion, but if there is some kind of general resistance, turn the question around and say, well, what would you do to make this a little bit easier, or what goals could you set to kind of drive this? How would you try and encourage this kind of behavior, or how would you try to establish this in your organization if you were dealing with this resistance? And kind of just turn things around and make them think of it from a different angle.
Yeah, that's really great feedback. Thanks, Etienne. Laurie, your view, please.
My views were very similar to Etienne's, actually, is to, you really don't want a heated situation, but often there is value in probing a little further and unpacking some of that initial resistance. And sometimes there might be some really valid reasons. And sometimes with the probing questions, you can really help people see the reason for a change. And if they don't come up with a better solution themselves, it might help them steer towards the solution that's being proposed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what everybody has said. I think giving this person the opportunity to, to vent and to grieve to a certain extent, to allow maybe part of the problem out. But then, the key role of the facilitator is to keep the meeting on track and to keep moving towards the objective of the session. So, yeah, it's a good question. Thanks so much for that. Charlotte, we have another question, please.
Ellie, you may. We've got a live question from Nick, who's watching on YouTube. Many of us have bad habits when it comes to running meetings. Which are the panel's favourite facilitation techniques and why?
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick, on YouTube. Panel, your favourite facilitation techniques. We'll have Dianne, Sarbojit, and then Paul, please.
So a clear agenda would ensure that the facilitator keeps the meeting on track, and also having timelines would also ensure that you don't continue with a particular topic and you may move away from what the actual objective of the meeting is. And also maintaining eye contact with participants is important, so you have them engaged in the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful. Thanks, Dianne. Sarbojit, your thoughts, please?
I completely agree with Dianne. And my bad habit is when it comes to meetings, I would want to stick to the agenda and not encourage a lot of side talks, at least when we are in session. So what I want to do is, and there has been situations where people try to drag on something and try to bring up controversies, and I would just tell them that, okay, this is our time that I can allot you to speak. And then if they want to continue more, I'll have to ask them politely to stop. If they still don't, then I will have to be a bit more stern, and otherwise I have to take other actions. And if it is online, I have muted people who would, not wanting to stop and carry on and let us, make us not achieve our objective. So that is my bad habit. I can be very hard.
Thanks, Sarbojit. Paul, your thoughts, please.
Yes, I wasn't sure. We'd be revealing bad habits here. I'm not sure, but I'll give one of mine. I know one of the things I can find sometimes. I can get ahead of myself in terms of thinking about my next question and tend to stop listening to maybe what the answer is. And that's obviously something you shouldn't do as a facilitator. Listen to the answers to make sure that your next question is certainly appropriate and online with what they're asking or what they're contributing. In terms of my favourite facilitation techniques, I know something I always ensure at the end of my sessions is I'll ask what the takeaways are, what are the lessons learned. So people are reviewing what they've just spent the last 3 hours doing, and they'll hopefully stick in their head, and they'll take that away with them as well.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thanks. I think as a facilitator, having a variety of techniques and approaches to things in your toolbox when you come into a session is really important, because if you find that you're starting to work on something and people are not responding, to be able to get them to look at the problem in a different way, to bring out something, some radiant problem solving or something like that, to try and get them to come at the subject differently is really important. So a variety of techniques to deal with the bad habits when they come up, I think, is a good approach. Thank you, Nick. I hope that was useful and the panel gave you some great advice. Charlotte, can we have our next question, please?
You can, Ellie. We've got another live question from a viewer on LinkedIn. Uina is asking how to involve everyone in active discussion during the online meetings.
Yeah, great question. I'm sure that's come up a lot recently. Okay, so we'll have Sarbojit, Dianne, Paul, and then Etienne, please.
Yeah, it's very tricky when it's an online and we don't get to influence people. And many people, especially in Asia, people do not want to speak. We Asians are very shy when it comes to speaking in front of many others. So what I would do normally, I would break the group into smaller subgroups and give them into different other small rooms so they can then speak in smaller, non-threatening environment. And the other thing that I would do is, at least if not, then make some people as a kind of a mentor inside them, and then ask them to go around and get people and get their ideas and then maybe speak for them. So everyone can then have a small discussion, they can then contribute, and then we can have the ideas come out. So I think in a facilitated meeting online, that's a very good thing that has worked for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sarbojit. Dianne, your thoughts, please?
Right. So you can use some techniques such as whiteboards and post-its where you can get people involved, not just speaking, but actually thinking about the issues and contributing. And also I agree with the previous speaker that you can also break them up into smaller breakout groups, so people may feel more comfortable speaking in a smaller group.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think a lot of our meetings and sessions have moved online now, so I think this is quite current, really. I know one of the things that I find is if it is a small enough group, get people to introduce themselves at the start, ask them a silly question, ask them how their week's been, the favourite thing that's happened to them, just to get them involved in the conversation early on. I think that can help. But then also as the session goes on, I use the chat box a lot. So maybe asking just a closed question that's a yes or no. So they'll give a thumbs up, thumbs down initially in the chat box, and then you can go to them, ask them why they thought no, why they thought yes. It's just a simple way of getting them involved in an easy way, which is just via a text message on the chat box, and then bring them into conversations. But I also keep a tick list. I have 8 people on my current sessions at the moment, and I will mark when they contribute. And if they're not contributing, I'll be harsh and I will go to them and I will ask them direct questions as well to ensure that everyone gets something from the session.
Yeah, absolutely. Etienne, your view, please.
Yeah, I find it is often quite difficult to get people involved in discussions online. But there are other ways to get people engaged, and it doesn't necessarily have to be speaking out and having conversations, but you can use some of the other tools in your online meeting toolkit. It depends on the platform you're using, but most of these platforms have options for running polls and kind kind of using that kind of question technique to get feedback from everyone. And often I'll sit there and go, right, I'm still waiting for 3 answers, and I'll force those last 3 people to answer the question before I move on. Yeah, so you do force some kind of engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're using a great example of that today. We're the audience are interacting with us using Slido, and it does contain polling ability as well as ability to answer live questions. And you can see as the facilitator who has answered and who hasn't, so you can give everyone a bit of a nudge if you know that they're not interacting. So yeah, great example of that going on today. Charlotte, can we have our next question, please?
You can, Ellie. Sorry. The question is from Jane in Plymouth. Is being a confident facilitator the same as being an effective facilitator?
Great question, Jane. Thank you for that. So we'll have Dianne, and then we'll have Sarbojit on this one, please, and then Paul.
So definitely being confident as a facilitator is important, because then you command the respect and you encourage people to speak. But it's not one of the main or only aspect of being a facilitator, because you also have to be able to change your techniques. If it's not working, you need to set your agenda, you need to have time management. So it's one of the aspects of being an effective facilitator, but there are other skills as well that you need.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Dianne. We're going to go to Sarbojit, please.
Hi. I would, agree what was said right now. And well, a confident facilitator has to be, but to be effective, being confident is not enough. You'll have to be prepared. You'll have to be in control of the situation, and you have to understand and think to be being in the shoes of your learners, so then you can help them to learn. So to be effective, there are many other things, and of course you will also might have to be the subject matter expert, because you are facilitating in their learning. So these are the other more important things which are there, other than being confident. And well, if you're not a confident trainer, then you may lose a little bit of control over the class, which can be brought back at the later point in time. Many of us, when we started training, at least I was not a very confident facilitator in the beginning of the career, but then it comes over time. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Paul, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I agree with Sarbojit there. It's not the same, definitely not the same. I'd rather be an effective facilitator, but like Dianne said, they're just 2 of the qualities that out of the many of the things that you need to be as a facilitator. I wouldn't say I'm always 100% confident as a facilitator. I think that does come with time. I certainly get imposter syndrome still now on events like this as well. But yeah, definitely being effective is probably on the higher of the priorities. But like Sarbojit said, being prepared is definitely the biggest thing that will help build that confidence. Going in there knowing you're doing the right thing and you're going to do it well, and that will help build confidence. Hopefully that will come in time.
Yeah, I think, with confidence as well, as you say, Paul, takes time and a bit of experience to build that. But I think also there's been a link pop up on the bottom of the screen for a book on facilitation, which points you to a whole host of techniques that you can use as a facilitator. So I think confidence can come from knowing that you've got all of those tools and techniques in your toolbox, so you can manage that meeting and move on to something else if what you're trying to do at the moment isn't working as well as it should be. So yeah, great question. Thank you for that. And Charlotte, please may we have the next question?
You may, Ellie. We've got a live question from Bibu on YouTube. While training, not all of them love to come on video. How do you maintain decorum when half of your students on camera and the other half incognito?
Great question. And Sarbojit, will come to you on that one, please.
Hi, very, very relevant question. And over the last 2 years, I have faced such things, and I believe all of my peers here have encountered that. So now, one thing that happens if people don't come on video, well, I sort of request them, but then I cannot pester them, and I don't do that. Now, what do I do is to ensure that they are there, they are around, I will normally engage into different activities and ask questions that also people are always on their toes and to answer, to respond, to collaborate, so that even if the video is off, at least I know and others know that there is someone behind. Otherwise, well, I can switch on one training video and attend another training, I don't know, and do whatever else, or maybe take my dog for a walk and come back. And then I can say, oh, the trainer was not good enough. I didn't learn anything. So that's not going to happen. And another thing is, yeah, ping them from time to time to make sure they are still there alive. So that is the only way out.
Yeah, thanks, Sarbojit. That's helpful. Etienne, how would you handle this situation?
Yeah, again, so I spoke about polling earlier, and so I sometimes use those polls and try to kind of force answers and make sure that everyone in the group has responded to a polled question. I use sample questions from the subject material if I'm training a course. Another technique that I like to use is to also kind of randomly ask a person in the group to answer a particular question. So how do you feel about this particular topic, or have you ever experienced something like this? And and just get some kind of feedback from people in the room. And then people never really know when when they're next, so it kind of does keep them on their toes and kind of keep them at their screens.
Yeah, absolutely. Laurie, your view, please.
Yes, quite similar. So I've noticed in different cultures there is a tendency or reluctance to appear on camera as well. So I've certainly made people feel welcome, but I'm also set expectations that if they're not on camera, the likelihood of me selecting them to answer questions and engages increases. And also asking people to let me know if they need to step away for any reason, just to put a note in chat, just to give me confidence that people are present, that they are paying attention. But yeah, certainly preferential questioning around for the people who are off camera, just to ensure that they're engaged.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Setting expectations, is really important for this one, isn't it? If people understand prior to, attending a session that the expectation is really that you would like them to be on camera, then, maybe you can help to manage that. But it's definitely a tricky one that we've all faced in recent time. Charlotte, next question, please, for the panel.
Of course, Ellie, we've got another live question from Arlene on YouTube. How important is starting on time and the management of time as a facilitator, and why?
Okay, panel, are we sticklers for time management? We'll go Dianne, Sarbojit, Paul, and then Etienne, please, and then Laurie, full panel answer.
So you usually have one opportunity to make a good impression, and people look at you to see how organized and in control of the meeting you are. So starting on time gives the participants an opinion of you that you are well organized and that you have good time management skills.
Okay, thanks, Dianne. Sarbojit, your view, please.
Yeah, Dan, I absolutely agree with you. And I would also say that we must, as a facilitator, walk the talk. If I am asking people to be on time, and if I don't start meetings or the sessions on time and don't keep things on time, then I can't expect others to do that. And if they don't do that, well, I can never finish things on time. And that will make a lot of people unhappy, including myself. And so I rather start on time. I need to go back home on time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think sometimes the start of the meeting can be out of your control, can't it? Because you're relying on those people to turn up on time. But yeah, they can catch up That's that, in my opinion, if they're not there on time. But for me, the most important thing is finishing on time. I know towards an end of a session, if people know that it's due to finish soon, if I'm running over or I'm likely to run over, that's when people are going to switch off, lose interest. So yeah, absolutely. Finish the session on time. Be strict on your time schedule throughout. If things are starting to run away from you, then yeah, they bring it back online again, keeping control of that agenda or that session to ensure that it does finish on time is as important as a facilitator.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Laurie?
Yes, I agree. It's absolutely critical to be manage time very effectively. You're one person who's really responsible for the time of a large group, and you really need to show the people that you respect their time by being timely yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else will be on board. I think, particularly with online meetings and training, it's even more particular where there's so much attention to being specifically on time. For some reason, waiting 1 minute seems a lot longer when we're online than it does when we're face to face, where things seem to be a bit loose. So definitely, I'm a bit of an advocate for being very strict and regimented with timing.
Brilliant. Thanks. Etienne, your views, please.
Yeah, I think being on time as a facilitator is really important. Not only does it show that you're organized, but it also shows the group that you are serious about this session. And I find if you start on time on day one, then everyone knows that they have to be on time on day two. And what I find is, especially with day one, a lot of people are kind of need to introduce themselves, and there's that first session in the morning on day one of a workshop or a class really is a little bit of time where you can kind of spend some time introducing each other, introducing yourself. And so people who arrive a little late will feel a little awkward about arriving late, but they won't actually miss anything substantial. And then they know that on day two, if they're late, they're going to miss out. So
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think starting on time is really important. I think it's an element of respect for the people that are coming to the session, but also, as Etienne says, I think it sets expectations. What I have seen done in the past, though, when someone is facilitating a meeting, if the agenda is set throughout the day, but a particular activity is moving the session towards the objective, they might lengthen that, or they might remove other things that were due to happen later. Just you're getting towards the goal of the meeting in the first place, you can play around a little bit with the day's agenda. So I think the management of time throughout the session is within the facilitator's control, depending on how the session is going. But definitely starting on time, I would say, is just a given for any session that you're running. Okay, Charlotte, next question, please.
Thanks, Ellie. We've got a question from Jane in Plymouth again. How important is good and thorough preparation to be a pro facilitator?
Good and thorough preparation. Great question, Jane. Sarbojit, and then Paul on this one, please, and then Dianne.
Well, Jen, I can tell you, you are very prepared. You have been bombarding us with a lot of questions. That is wonderful. I never had question from one participant. So great. Now, if you say pro, well, I am not a pro. I don't know if I'm a pro, but I can tell you, preparation is important, because to do a job good, you need to prepare, you need to plan. So if I'm not prepared and very thorough with it, I will not be able to deliver properly. So what do we have? For me, I have my course, outlines done. I have my deliverables, what I do, what are the activities I'll do, when I start, when I stop. I have a detailed plan for that. And normally, whenever I go for a training, facilitation, or any workshop, anything, the first day I have to be early. And if it is a big thing, then I do go and do some reconnaissance work earlier. So I know the place, I know everything in advance. And then I prepare myself. So I may be looking like a pro, even if I'm not. So I think that could be one secret of being a pro facilitator.
Thanks, Sarbojit. Paul, your thoughts on this one, please?
Yeah, it's absolutely important. There's so much you can do before you start a training session, for example, ensuring the environment in the classroom is set up correctly, and posters on the wall that are going to inspire discussion, flip charts out, and the TV screens, your videos are all in place. All of that is important in order to have an organised and an organised session that runs smoothly. Another one for me is if you have the opportunity, if you're able to get to know your participants beforehand. I know we used to get a brief profile for the individuals before they come in our courses, just learn a little bit about them, where they're from, what they know, what their experiences are, because it will all help your question base and the integration, the relationships throughout the session as well, and that's really important.
Yeah, that's some great tips there. Thanks, Paul. Going on to Dianne now, please.
So the role of a facilitator is to facilitate and guide the discussions. However, if the topic is one that's very technical in nature, to be able to guide the discussions, you would still need to have some knowledge of the particular topic. So preparation in that case is very important. Also, if you have a multicultural or multivaried group of participants, you would also need to be prepared to know how to address different cultural issues to guide the conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Laurie, your thoughts, please.
I have nothing further to add. So it's similar to Dianne. It's all about preparation, so understand the technical side, and similar to Paul, if you get that opportunity to understand the stakeholders you're going to be dealing with, some of the expectations and things like that, I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, adding to that preparation, a good brief on what the objective of the session is. What are you trying to achieve as the facilitator? What are you trying to get as the end result? And, understanding that clearly so that when you have completed the session, you've achieved what it is you set out to do, as well as having all those tools and techniques that we've already talked about throughout today. Okay, Charlotte, next question, please.
Thanks, Ellie. We've got another live question from Nick, who's watching on YouTube. Does the panel agree that a facilitator is generally neutral, a catalyst to help a group solve a problem rather than presenting their own opinions?
Yeah, okay, great question. Thanks, Nick. We'll have a response from Etienne, Dianne, Sarbojit, and Paul, please.
So I think the answer to this question, like the answer to many questions, is it depends. So if you're in a training environment, and you are the subject matter expert, sure, go ahead, share opinions. If you are running a facilitated workshop, you do really want to remain neutral and just guide and steer discussions, and try to encourage contribution from the group without sharing your own.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's the key there, isn't it? Sarbojit, can you add something to this for me, please?
Hi. Well, I do agree that the facilitator will have to be neutral. Now, if I'm doing a workshop where the trainees will have to form an opinion of their own, then I certainly will have to be just giving them those inputs by which they will be able to arrive at their own decision making. But I cannot drive them to a decision. That will be very unbiased. So what I would do is at the end, maybe I can give them as an expert what could be my decision after they have stated their decision. And that too, I would normally say that, all the decisions they have made are all good, but this could be some more thoughts to take into consideration. So yeah, I think that's about it. So thank Nick for this question.
Thank you, Sarbojit. Dianne, your view, please.
Yes, I totally agree with the other participants that being neutral is important because you're guiding the conversation of the group, of the meeting, and really the outcome is the outcome of the group. So I would say that being neutral is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, can you finish us off on this one, please?
Yeah, and with Etienne, in terms of it being, it depends, doesn't it, on the situation? I mean, if it is something to do with mandatory training policy, then you need to challenge those inaccuracies. You can't obviously let people leave the training having the wrong opinion, not the wrong opinion, sorry, the wrong facts, leaving that session. So yeah, you do need to be prepared to challenge inaccuracies. However, if it is a session that is an ideas session, then as a facilitator, yes, remain impartial, ask those difficult questions, the challenging questions, play devil's advocate, but certainly don't impose ideas or opinions on other people.
Great. Thanks very much for that one, panel. Charlotte, can we have another question, please?
You can, Ellie. We've got another live question. This is from Arlene on YouTube. What are some suggestions facilitators can use to improve those afternoon sessions where participants' energy tend to wane?
Coming to you on a Friday afternoon in the UK. So we'll hear from Sarbojit on this one. Any other panel want to contribute, Paul, as well, please?
Thank you. Thank you so much for such wonderful question. And well, very interesting. Now, I have faced such thing, and what I will do is I will preempt people before going to lunch. I will say, yes, this is a training time, not a time for picnic. So please come back having a light lunch, bring sandwiches, not have big meals, and warn them about food coma. You know, I talk about food coma. I talk about remind them about the urge of deep meditation after the lunch break is over. So what I would normally do is have more of activities planned during that. So if people have to move, then they don't have that urge of meditation so much. If they are sedentary, then you have a problem. And then you say, then what do you do? Online sessions, how can you make them move? Yeah, I can say, hey, this is the time, let's stand up, stretch our hands, and then maybe do some fun activity. And yeah, everyone likes it because sitting somewhere and for hours together, those things, and especially after lunch, it helps people a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great advice there. Thank you, Sarbojit. Paul, your thoughts, please?
I know for classroom-based activities, we'd have a bank of energizers, we call them. You'll find these on the internet. There's hundreds of them, but certainly little things that might be like just getting your group to join hands and then find the best way to get a hula hoop through the body and out the other end. It might not be relevant to the training, but it might be a 5-minute exercise that just brings a bit of energy back into the group. But then again, it could be finding something that is relevant to the training. So for leadership, we used to build bridges out of spaghetti, that uncooked spaghetti, obviously not cooked spaghetti, but just to challenge them and make it interesting, and then discuss what happened in the situation and what lessons were learned throughout it. So yeah, trying to vary it online, it is difficult, absolutely. But again, maybe variations on there, whether it's bringing in videos, whether it's bringing small activities, changing the groups up a little bit, just to spark a little bit more discussion between different characters and personalities, should all help keep people interested in the sessions.
Yeah, great advice and tips there, Paul. Thank you very much. Etienne, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think in the classroom it's a lot easier when you are running a physical group session. You know, I've even had an exercise where every hour we swap desks, or swap seats, and so there's lots of ways to kind of keep people kind of energized and on their toes and awake in the classroom. And I find it a lot more difficult online. The one thing I have found with virtual classes and online sessions is that instead of having one morning tea break and one afternoon tea break, I tend to have a 10-minute break every hour, just to kind of give people that opportunity to stand up, stretch their legs, and whether people do or not, you can't tell if cameras are off. So but I always give them the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, some great advice there for the lunchtime lull. Charlotte, please may we have what will be, I think, our last question for today.
Thanks, Ellie. We've got a question from one of our regular contributors, Cindy. They ask, what are some techniques to facilitate effective meetings to maximise the time and effort of attendees?
Okay, panel, your favourite facilitation techniques for maximising effort. Dianne, and then Paul, please, and then Sarbojit.
So you'd want to ensure that your meeting is effective and meet the agenda and objective. So you would want to prepare adequately. You would have very clear and concise communication with the participants, active listening to what the participants have to say because you're facilitating the conversation and the discussion, as well as having good time management skills so that you keep the time of the meeting and you don't go over.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Dianne. And Paul, your thoughts, please?
I think ensuring people turn up prepared. So don't be afraid of sending content out before the meeting, agendas out before the meeting. So those that maybe don't think on the feet as fast, then they can prepare themselves when they walk into that meeting. They've already had time to think about it. That can go for training as well. We always send out booklets about the training before we do the sessions. Just again, it gives time for people to formulate opinions and ideas so they come to that session prepared and hopefully makes the meeting be a bit more effective on the day.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you. Sarbojit.
Yeah, I would say be disciplined, be on time, and have everything planned. So if it needs to be that the content has to go early, it has to go early. If it is that you need to have to have those the curiosity to be there, so you can do that. But whatever you do, if you have a very thorough planning, very thorough planning, well, you might need to tweak it a little bit over time. But if you plan well, you can manage well. I would say that will be one effective, technique.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. Etienne, finish us off on this one, please.
A little bit more difficult if you are meeting with different people all of the time. But when I was meeting regularly with a particular team, I made sure that they understood my approach to running meetings. Meetings would never last longer than half an hour. Everyone had to do their research, do their homework, come to the meeting, make their recommendations, make their suggestions. And the idea was that no work would get done in the meeting. You come in, give your feedback, we'd assign tasks, we'd go away, do them. And then in the next meeting, we'd give feedback and assign new tasks. And so that was quite easy when I had a team that I would meet with regularly. That's obviously more difficult if you can't kind of establish that pattern. But where you are meeting with a team regularly, you can establish patterns like that and people get used to your particular method.
Thank you, Etienne. What a great level of questions today. So I'd like to thank our audience, who are really our producers of the show, for all the excellent questions. Great job. And don't forget to watch out for your name in the credits if your question was selected. So panel, I'd now like to invite you to give us your closing remarks. So we'll start with Laurie.
Well, thank you. I guess the key takeaway that I'd like to share is it's really about planning and preparation. So planning and preparation with those objectives in mind. So it's all that work that you do before you're actually facilitating.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Laurie. And Paul, your thoughts on your first appearance on Level Up?
Yeah, I suppose closing thoughts for me is always listen to understand, not to reply, and that's something I have to constantly remind myself of in order to then ask effective questions, work on that question technique, because that is key in any facilitation session.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you. Etienne, your thoughts on today?
Yeah, so mine follows up to what Paul just said and something that Paul said a little earlier as well. It's a kind of takeaway that I'd like to share. And that is, when you are listening to someone, don't listen to respond. Listen and pick something up in what they've said, so you can you can kind of follow on the next question from something that they said. And I find that kind of forces me as a facilitator to listen. Active listening is a key skill for a facilitator. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Etienne. That's great. Dianne, your closing thoughts?
Thanks very much. So a very interesting show with a lot of interesting questions. And I was also able to learn a lot from my fellow panelists. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dianne. Great to have you with us. And Sarbojit, your thoughts on today, please.
Well, it has been an enjoying time for me, and I'm moving Plymouth very soon. No, what I want to say is thank you so much, everyone, those who have been listening, because without you, we won't be here. So thank you again for all the questions, and please keep them coming.
Okay, thanks, Sarbojit. That's great. So just welcome back Charlotte, our question master, for her thoughts on today's session.
Thanks, Ellie. Thank you to our panelists. Couldn't have done it without you. And as always, our viewers, we can't do it without the questions that we receive from you. Some great questions and some fantastic answers. So thank you very much. And we look forward to the next Level Up on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well done, everyone. Great show. And thanks so much for being a part of our panel today. So audience, over on our website, you can search for answers to over 1,500 previously answered questions, a comprehensive and completely free resource connecting you with over 140 experts from around the world. Don't forget, you can also listen to all of the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and we'll send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks, everyone. See you again.